Happy chapter number 18, students, and welcome to the end of our textbook, the last chapter in nutrition that we'll talk about. However, it is an important one. So this chapter is talking about world hunger and malnutrition, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So malnutrition, oh my gosh, 805 million people around the world are chronically undernourished, meaning they're not getting enough food, or the type of food they're getting is the same kind of food, so it doesn't provide the nutrients that they need. So this is a concern. Worldwide, over 1/3 of the deaths in children under the age of 5 are due to undernutrition. That's sad. I can't fathom what it's like to be a parent and watch your child die of hunger when you can do nothing about it. And so it's my hope that you will feel that same empathy and compassion, and that we will look towards some universal solutions towards hunger, starting with our own country here. All right, so the cycle of undernutrition, it affects both the health and productivity of a population, right? So think about it. If people in a population are unhealthy, or they're too weak to work, then you are lacking productive workers to provide the economy that your country needs. And so it's this vicious cycle that we see here. You can read about this and understanding what a challenge it is to provide in an economy that most of your citizens are starving. Poverty and malnutrition, again, looking at life expectancy, looking at infant mortality, means the death rate of our children. Literacy, how well they can read, what percent of the population could read. So looking at these slides here, we see the US, and we see 99% can read. We see our infant mortality death rate is at 6.2%. And then we go down to the less developed nations that are dealing with this chronic undernutrition, and we see their numbers. And we're looking at, if you look at Afghanistan, you would go from 6.2% in the US to 117.2%. And then we go in literacy. So 99% can read, and we go to 31.7% that can read and write. And so these are, this whole issue of poverty, this whole issue of places around the world that just don't have the many resources that we do is really concerning. The effects of malnutrition on childhood, mortality and morbidity. So mortality and morbidity mean really disease and death. Okay? And we see here, these are the different reasons they're dying, whether it's pneumonia or babies that are born premature. All of these are, reasons that we lose so many children. Causes of hunger and undernutrition. One is going to be famine. So what is famine? Famine is when a population or an area does not have access to food because of disaster, because of they can't get food to them because of a collapse in the food production system, and just, again, marketing. So these reasons can happen, like when we saw Hurricane Katrina, when we see catastrophes happen, these disasters that happen, whether they're natural or man-made, they cause a segment of our population to not get the nourishment that they need. Poverty creates food insecurity. It is the greatest cause. So meaning, being poor is a reason why you will not eat, or a reason why you will not eat enough. And more than 1 billion people in developing countries earn less than $1.25 per day. And here in the US, we kind of haggle about our minimum wage, and we're looking at people in poorer countries that are just, struggling to even make enough that feeds you, let alone maybe your family. Most impoverished areas in the world. So we can see here on this slide, we here are up in this gray area of North America. And then we can look at, Central America, South America, other parts of the world here, and see, there's great challenge in this area. And again, remember, when our kids are not getting that protein that we need protein, and we need that and to perform so many functions in our body, that this is what we get. We get a couple different types of diseases that either cause us to look like our, children's body's head is too big for the size of their body, or they have this distended belly type syndrome. So other issues that we're concerned about, stunting. So stunting is this decreased growth and height in children. So basically, if you think about it, remember, we need nutrients. We need that energy. We need certain types of nutrients. We've talked about that all of our time together here. And if our children don't get those nutrients, if they only get carbs or they only get protein and they're not getting fats and they're not getting carbs, you know, whatever it is, it's going to cause their body to not be able to grow in the way it's supposed to. It's not getting the fuel and energy for that growth production, and that's stunting. Biotechnology can most effectively increase food production by creating plants that are resistant to insects. So let's say that we could go over to a third world country and we could create a greenhouse, or we could create a small area that we're going to plant some food. And if we could somehow engineer those plants that pests would not attack them, because that's really the biggest killer of the different crops and products in these third world countries, then it would be amazing. So what we're saying is we need scientists, we need people who are investing in figuring out ways that are not just dousing them with pesticides, because even that doesn't seem to work in these countries. And then conserving our natural resources. So purchasing, for us here in the US, this is something I hope we're moving towards, is to buy in bulk. In other words, when I pack my kids' lunches, I don't buy those boxes where you get like 30 bags of chips. I buy one big bag of chips from Costco or whatever it is. My kids actually like this popcorn stuff that's supposed to be natural. So I buy this big bag and then I put it into little baggies, but I don't actually use the plastic baggies. They have reusable bags. So they're like, you know, one kid has blue, one has yellow, whatever colors I give them. And it's like every day you bring these back home to me. Sometimes I need to rinse them out and I reuse them next day. Or else just think of how many baggies you go through when you're preparing your kids' lunches. So buying things in bulk and then, you know, proportioning them out instead of buying individual packaging. It's just we're using so many resources to do individual packaging. Have you noticed that we are going away from using straws? Me and my family, we use stainless steel straws. And the reason we do that is because, again, they say, I forget what the statistic is. There's statistic like there's so many billions and billions of straws in the ocean that our dolphins and our sea animals, you know, get inside of them because it's just floating waste out there. And so if we could just reduce that, I think the trend is now restaurants will actually have you need to request a straw. Say, can I have a straw, instead of them just putting them down for all the customers, because we're trying to reduce the amount of plastic and the amount of paper products that we're using. So, and reducing the consumption of animal products. How about composting? So composting is a way where you're going to take maybe the ends of your fruits and vegetables or the produce that's old or bad or you're not using, and you're going to be able to, we had a little kind of lesson on food waste, right? So composting is a good way to reuse some of that. So breaking that cycle of malnutrition, again, these are some of the ways we are working towards eliminating poverty. Gosh, we're working at different education things we can do, better health care for our kids. This is our future that we're talking about. Sustainable agriculture and renewable sources. So this is awesome. So sustainable, whenever we say the word sustainable, it really means that we are looking for methods that are going to be able to continue on and they're good for the environment, right? So choosing, we said before, choosing that locally grown produce and minimizing the transportation. So if we have oranges that are grown in Florida and we need to put them on a truck and get them all the way to California, right? The resources that go into that when we talk about smog, when we talk about pollution from that smog, when we talk about the gas that we're using for those trucks to come here, versus me going down to my local farmer's market and getting some oranges grown here. Right, so these, and not to mention the cost that's passed on to you with that transportation, you get the cost of that. Renewable sources, so these are, again, they're better ways of being able to use things. So we're trying to reuse our soil and our water. And some good examples or things that we could do would be using renewable sources such as paper towels, right? Bread, actually, wood crates. So these are better than, saying, getting plastic containers of things. So using these renewable sources are really, really good. Food insecurity here in the US, we're going to see that our people living in the inner cities, those urban cities, are the ones most affected by this food insecurity, or hunger, shall we say. Our ethnic populations are also greater influenced by that. And, you know, in other words, we need to understand hunger is not just something that we deal with when we talk about third world countries. We still have a big problem with it here in our country at home. Food deserts. So food deserts, the definition is really these areas that are likely to have less access to affordable foods that are in a healthy diet. So maybe all they have is packaged foods. So if you look at this picture here, an urban food desert. So if you think of a city that's very compacted and has a lot of residents in it, there's not a bunch of open farmers markets. And here you're going to find a little corner store that might have, again, more packaged foods than it does have local food products. And so these are food deserts, areas where you can't get, excuse me, the healthy fruits and vegetables or things you need. And this cycle of poverty, understand that, you know, how we have these low-paying jobs that lead to having to work long hours, that lead to not being able to, you know, invest in your education and invest in kind of moving up into that next income bracket, and not being educated on what is a healthy diet, what should we be eating, right? Not having taken nutrition courses. Right, so different programs that we have to try to target some of our populations here in the US. A big one that we see is WIC. So WIC stands for Women, Infants, and Children. And so it's a federal program that targets pregnant women, infants, and children for nutritional food assistance and education, meaning that when we have low-income pregnant moms, we give them this food stamps or this program that will allow them to go and get the milk and the dairy and the protein and the things that they need to feed their children. So they can feed themselves if they're pregnant. If they have kids, feed their infants and children. Right, so continuing to look at some of the different programs that we have, make sure to read through these. We have a lot of varying programs that provide assistance to especially our most vulnerable, which is children. Okay, so again, you know, here, go through your clicker slides so you can kind of learn a little more and retain more information about our concern about world hunger and malnutrition in that respect. And that's it for going through our chapters, or our 18 chapters in our nutrition book. Good job, guys.